Welcome to Creating Accessible Documents using Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. This is a webinar from the Onley Initiative for Employment and Enterprise Development. As we work through this presentation, we will be using various tools and functions of Word and PowerPoint to help you create accessible documents. Many of the people accessing this presentation may already be proficient Word and PowerPoint users who will be aware of how to use the formatting functions I'm describing. This will make it easier to get the technical part of these formatting skills across. However, my primary objective here is first to help you understand why we choose to format our documents in this way, to build accessibility into them up front, creating documents that are accessible to those using assistive technologies, and ensuring we are in compliance with WCAG Standards. WCAG meaning WCAG, which stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. This is a set of recommendations for making web content and indeed all digital content available online more accessible, primarily for people with disabilities. You can explore more about these WCAG guidelines at w3.org. The purpose of this presentation is not to have you walk away being experts in creating accessible documents. What I'm hoping to achieve is to have you take away a new awareness of the tools available in Word and PowerPoint to help you create documents that are accessible. One thing I'd like you to keep in mind is that accessible PDF conversion isn't perfect. Even when you apply all these accessibility measures and techniques of Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, sometimes the conversion to PDF still leaves a document with accessibility issues that can only be fixed using Adobe Acrobat Pro or some other PDF editor. Adobe Acrobat Pro is available with a subscription, and there is a learning curve in applying the accessibility tools available within that program. That being said, there are steps you can take immediately to improve the accessibility of your Microsoft documents and exported PDFs. This presentation will cover the following accessibility issues and accessible design tools and techniques. With Microsoft Word, we'll look at creating document structure using headings and styles, how to use the navigation pane, how to apply alt text to all images, photos, and charts in your presentation, how to create accessible hyperlinks, how to use tables properly. We'll cover columns and lists. We'll take a look at color and contrast. We will look at document properties, Word Accessibility Checker, how to convert a Word doc to Adobe PDF, and then finally take a look at the Adobe Acrobat Accessibility Check. For PowerPoint presentations, we will cover how to create an accessible presentation, take a look at the PowerPoint selection pane, and how to run the PowerPoint accessibility checker. Now let's look at how you can add structure to your documents to increase accessibility. Clear and well-formatted headings can go a long way toward making your Word documents meet global accessibility standards. Headings are a great way to tell people what they need to know quickly. Sighted readers can scan headings and take in high-level overview of what the document is about. In the same way, we can help users of assistive technology, like a screen reader, to scan a document via headings that have been properly formatted with heading styles. Screen reader users can then skim a document to find the content they want via a list of headings generated by using heading styles, creating a navigable table of contents that is well structured and easy to navigate. Ensure that you write headings that are short and specific to the information that follows them, making them easily understandable to someone who may be new to the topic. So how do we create accessible headings? You highlight the text you want to make a heading from, select the Home tab, and access the heading styles under the Styles section of the ribbon. You can mouse over each style to get a preview of what it will look like in your document. Select the style, and the highlighted text will change to the format you have chosen. We suggest you use 3 to 4 levels of heading styles. Use heading 1 for the document's title, use heading 2 for the document's main section headings, use heading 3 for subsection headings. Use the normal style for regular paragraph text. Do not skip heading numbers. Use them sequentially. If you're only using 2 heading styles, for instance, don't jump from heading 1 to heading 3. Some people will do this for design reasons, preferring the particular formatting of a given style. Rather, choose the next heading style in the proper sequence of heading and simply change the formatting of that particular heading style. So how do we modify heading styles? If you don't like the look of the preset heading style, don't modify the formatting attributes of any particular heading text after you've made it into a heading. Instead, modify the heading style itself so that it applies consistently to all headings to which you apply that heading style. In the Styles section of the Home menu, right-click on the heading style you wish to change and select Modify. In the Modify Style window, you can choose formatting options to change the size, font type, bold, italic, etc. Once saved, this change will be applied consistently to text whenever you choose that heading style. You can use the navigation pane to check the document structure which you're creating by using these headings. Heading structure will appear in the navigation pane, which you can view by checking the box in the Show section of the View menu. The navigation pane allows you to navigate within the document, clicking on the headings to jump to that section of your document. As I said, this heading structure enables assistive technologies like screen readers to navigate through the Word document easily. This heading structure will also form a table of contents, a clickable list of navigable bookmarks, when you convert your Word document to a PDF. We need to ensure that images and any visual content is made accessible by adding succinctly descriptive alt text for all images that are core content and contextually significant or relevant. Keep in mind that an image with an alt text field that is left empty is ignored by assistive technologies. So alt text needs to provide the person who is blind or the person with vision impairment or low vision a description that gives them enough information to understand the importance and relevance of the graphic content in the context of the document. The DCOI policy is that we should be trying to give those who are blind or have limited or low vision the same visual experience, and therefore we should ensure that there is alt text for every image or visual element on the page. However, some experts suggest that best practice involves only including alt text for images that actually carry meaningful content or are very contextually significant. WebAIM, who seeks to empower organizations to make their web content accessible to people with disabilities, sets out best practices with regard to images that are deemed decorative. Visit webaim.org and search alt text for more information. Following these best practices, decorative images that do not present important content and/or do not appear within a link, as well as spacer graphics that are used for layout or non-informative purposes, should have null alt text, meaning you would leave the alt text field blank. For example, a description of a decorative filigree line that divides up a page of text and does not convey content and is not embedded within a link is not considered useful or carrying core meaning and therefore not needed to be described in alt text. For accessible design purposes, consider whether it is necessary to include decorative graphics or a stock photo of smiling people in a generic office setting that has limited contextual relationship to the content of the page. While alt tags need to be descriptive, they also need to be brief. Avoid full sentences or paragraphs. With a limit of about 125 characters, an alt tag should provide enough detail for users and search engines to relate the image to the context of the page. For complex images such as charts, graphs, or maps that cannot be adequately described within the limits of an alt tag, a longer text alternative should be provided elsewhere. The alt text for the image should still describe the general content of the image, but the text alternative can be provided via a link to a separate web page that provides a longer description of the complex image. The link can be adjacent to the image, or the image itself could be linked to the long description page. Enter alt text by right-clicking on an image and selecting Format Picture. Within the Format Picture dialog, select the Layout and Properties icon. Then select Alt Text. Provide a description of the image in the description field. You should only enter a title if the content you are describing in your description field is long and complex. Including a title in the title field is useful so people can determine if they need to read the full description. Under the WCAG Standards, when creating hyperlinks, we need to ensure that we provide descriptive link text that describes the purpose of a link, giving the user an idea of the context for the link and what they can expect to find if they click on it. If you have hyperlinks in your Word document, you need to ensure that the display text is in ordinary language that is easy to understand, and avoid using the URL itself as the display text for the link. A typical URL can be quite long and sound like gibberish when read aloud. This might be fine for a sighted user whose eyes can scan it without really reading it. However, a screen reader might even read the URL out one letter at a time, which is painful to listen to, hard to process, and not informative. So don't put the URL text into the hyperlink text. Instead, create a descriptive hyperlink, something meaningful to the context of the document and informative for the site or document to which the user is being linked. To create or edit a hyperlink, highlight the text you wish to link or the link you wish to edit. Right-click and choose Hyperlink or Edit Hyperlink, and edit the text to display and or address boxes accordingly. Finally, when adding display text, avoid phrases like click here or learn more. People who rely on screen readers often browse a list of the article's links to get an idea of its content. If the display text for all those links is the same generic phrase, the screen reader will read out something like this: click here, link, click here, link, click here, link. Not very helpful. How do we create accessible tables? We need to use tables wisely. Generally, use them only as data tables. Avoid using tables for page layout. If persons using assistive technologies navigate through tables used for page layout, it may create real problems for a screen reader to follow the logical reading order of the page and make the content incomprehensible. To create a simple data table, use the Insert Table Grid tool, where you highlight the number of columns and rows you want on the grid that pops up, or use the Insert Table dialog box, where you enter the number of rows and columns. Do not use the Draw Table functionality. The Draw Table option corresponds to a page layout table, which can create accessibility issues. To make a table accessible, we structure a data table and its column headings, identifying which row contains the column headers. Designated header rows make it easier for a screen reader to navigate your table, and some screen readers will call out the name of a row or column before reading the data. To create a header row, right-click the row you wish to use as the header row and select Table Properties. In the Table Properties dialog, you should now be in a Row tab, where you can check the checkbox that says Repeat as Header Row at the top of each page. Also, be sure the setting for Allow Row to break across pages is unchecked, so that the lengthy text in one cell doesn't break partway through and end up on the next page. Avoid as much as possible extending a table to another page, as screen readers will consider them as two separate tables, one per page. Creating accessible tables requires us to enter alt text for the table that describes what the data in this table represents, using clear and concise language. Right-click on the table and go to Table Properties. Select the Alt Text tab and enter the appropriate description. When it comes to the sizing and spacing of table cells, there are accessibility considerations. Don't control the size of the cell or spacing inside the cell with blank lines or hard returns or blank spaces. These are flagged in Word's accessibility checker and can cause issues for screen readers. Go to Table Properties and use the Row and Column tabs to specify the height of a row or the width of a column there. Be mindful of spacing inside the cells. If the text inside the cell is too close to the cell border, this could create issues for those with limited vision. Do not control spacing of text inside the cell with unnecessary blank lines, hard returns, or blank spaces. Go to Table Properties, the Table tab, and Options. Here you can set the margins inside all cells. If you need to control the margins inside any particular cell, put your cursor in that cell and right-click to go to Table Properties, the Table tab, and Options. In the Cell Options dialog box, under Cell Margins, uncheck the box for Same as the Whole Table and adjust the left and right margins accordingly. In creating accessible tables, here are some things to avoid. Do not create your table using the Draw Table tool. Do not create page layouts with tables. Do not merge or split cells. Do not nest tables inside of other tables. Do not leave empty cells with no data. If a cell needs to appear empty, one approach could be to add some appropriate text like "no data for this cell" that a screen reader will read aloud. But we change the color of the text to white so that it creates the effect of being empty for the visual user. But a screen reader will read out that white text. If you need to place text in columns, use the Columns feature for formatting text in this way. Do not format the text into columns using tables because assistive technologies may not be able to read them properly. People using screen readers can use normal reading keyboard commands to move around column formatting. If it is actually inside a table, but made to look like columns, they have to use table reading and navigation commands. To create columns, highlight the text that you want in columns, click the Layouts tab and Columns drop-down menu, and choose 2 or 3 columns. Create lists using the bulleted or numbered list functionality. Without using the built-in formatting options for bullets or numbers, assistive technologies will interpret your list as a series of short, separate paragraphs instead of a coherent list of related items. Using color to convey meaning through symbol or color coding is problematic for persons with visual impairments. Be aware of the contrast in the colors of the text and figures and hyperlinks against the color of the background, choosing high contrast color combinations. In order to check for appropriate contrast, you first need to understand some color code basics. There are 2 main types of color code you need to be familiar with. The first is RGB code, standing for red, green, blue. Composed of these 3 colors, every color has a unique RGB code, where each of those 3 component colors is given a value from 0 to 255. The second is hex, or hexadecimal code, a series of 6 digits, 3 sets of 2, with each pair denoting the levels of red, green, or blue. Word only gives you the RGB code for color, so you may need to convert it to a hex code that is used in some programs that help you determine effective contrast ratio. There are many hex and RGB code conversion tools out there. Google RGB to hex and you will easily find one. When you have your hex code, you can check your color contrast against WCAG Standards outlined in 3 levels, A, AA, and AAA. WCAG 2 Level AA requires a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1 for normal text and 3 to 1 for large text. Large text is defined as 14 point and bold or larger, or 18 point or larger. To assess your contrast ratio, you can use WebAIM's Color Contrast Checker, where you enter your foreground color code and your background color code. In addition to giving you the contrast ratio, this tool will automatically tell you if it passes WCAG AA and AAA requirements for normal and large text. Another useful tool is an accessible color palette builder. Here you can enter the hex codes of a color palette you are thinking of working with, and it will show you the combinations of foreground and background colors that pass the acceptable color contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1. Document properties are used by search engines and screen readers to find and identify content in documents. The title, subject, author, keywords, and language are important elements of any document. The Document Properties form may be displayed by clicking on File. Properties are displayed on the right. Complete the form as follows. Title. Enter the title of the document. Tags, also referred to as keywords associated with the document, are essentially the search words that would be used to find that content online. Keywords assist in effectively ranking the document for relevance. The closer your tags or keywords are to the search words you feel your end user would enter, the higher your document will likely be ranked in the search results. When using multiple tags or keywords, separate them with a comma. Be sure to choose concise words that are relevant to the content. The comments field could be considered optional. If you do include comments, they should be appropriate and meaningful to the general public. In the subject field, enter a brief identification of the subject area of the document. Enter your name and company name in the Author Company field. Be sure to use meaningful and concise file names. A good file name provides clues to a document's content and age. So instead of naming this file mc_pres-access_pp-word-0519, it might be more meaningful to name it creating_accessible_documents-may_2019. Screen readers will often read out a file name. Microsoft also provides a resource video on this topic. Visit support.microsoft.com and search Create Accessible File Names. Microsoft's Accessibility Checker will scan your documents and alert you to any potential accessibility problems. It will also offer suggestions of how to fix them. To start the checker, go to the File menu and click the Check for Issues button, and from the drop-down menu, choose Check Accessibility. You may also find it in your Review tab, or type Accessibility into the Tell Me What You Want to Do search field. The Accessibility Checker task pane will show you the inspection results. It will alert you to the issues and how to resolve them. The Accessibility Checker verifies your file against a set of rules that identify possible issues for people who have disabilities. Depending on how severe the issue is, the Accessibility Checker classifies each issue as an error, warning, or tip. An error is content that makes the document difficult or impossible to read and understand for people with disabilities. A warning is content that, in most but not all cases, makes the document difficult to understand for people with disabilities. A tip is content that people with disabilities can understand, but that could be presented in a different way to improve the user's experience. There are many instructional videos out there on using this feature. Visit support.microsoft.com and search Check Document Accessibility. Having passed the Accessibility Checker in Word, you are on your way to creating an accessible PDF file. This means that by employing the accessible design features covered in this presentation, you've created a document that, when converted, supports a tagged PDF file. PDF tags provide a hidden document structure that is accessible to screen readers. There's more to an accessible PDF file than tags, but an untagged PDF would not be considered accessible. Converting your Word file to PDF is easily done by saving the document. Go to the File menu and select the Save As option. Select PDF from the Save As Type drop-down menu. Let's review the PDF options before saving. The defaults are generally good, but just to review them, you will know what the PDF formatting will do for you. For instance, note the default setting to create bookmarks in the PDF document using heading styles. If you don't need to change the default PDF options, you can simply choose Save As Adobe PDF from the File menu and go from there. As I mentioned earlier, conversion to PDF is not always smooth. So once you have converted your Word doc to PDF, it is advisable to run a PDF accessibility check. If you have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro, you can use their accessibility features to do this. There is a cost involved here to purchase a copy of the software or a monthly subscription. However, there are free tools out there that can run a PDF accessibility check and enable you to fix any issues as well. For instance, visit PAVE, P-A-V-E, which stands for PDF Accessibility Validation Engine. You can access this free open source tool at pave-pdf.org. But there's also a learning curve to master the accessibility tools in Acrobat Pro, which is beyond the scope of this presentation. But exploring Acrobat's full accessibility menu, you may encounter issues where you have to rearrange or create a logical reading order. You may have to add missing alt text or fix the tag structure in various ways to make a fully accessible PDF. We won't be deep diving into the ins and outs of creating accessible PowerPoint presentations here, but I will offer you some practical tips to guide you. Some of these tips will already be familiar, as they are the same techniques we apply to Word documents. Start with an accessible template. When you go to create a new PowerPoint file, enter accessible into the search bar at the top to find various accessible templates available to choose from. When creating a new slide, use the built-in slide designs. Edit layouts as necessary in the Slide Master view to maintain their accessibility. Create unique and descriptive slide titles for every slide. These titles become the bookmarks in the PDF document you export. Use the Layout option to title a slide. Start with a new slide layout and enter the title in the title text box. If no title text box appears, hit the Reset button. You will find this in the Home menu in the Slide section. You can also use the Outline view. Click View, Outline View, and enter or change titles there. Include alt text for all visuals. Right-click the image and choose Format Picture. Then click the Size and Properties tab to access the alt text dialog box. Avoid using text in images as the sole method of conveying important information. If you must use an image with text in it, be sure to repeat that text in the presentation. In the alt text, concisely describe the image, quoting any text used in the image and its intent. As with Word documents, we need to add meaningful hyperlink text that gives the context for the link destination content. Do not use the URL as the hypertext for the link to the content. In PowerPoint, you can also add a screen tip for the link. This is also true for Microsoft Word, though we didn't cover it previously. For the sighted user, a screen tip appears when your cursor hovers over the text or images that include a hyperlink. When using assistive technology, screen tips function similarly to alt text. As you can see in the screen capture here, I have created meaningful hypertext for the link to a guide on creating screen tips. Ensure a logical reading order using the selection pane. Now let's take a look at how we can use the selection pane in this way. We use the selection pane to make sure that our slide contents can be read in the order that we intend. In this pane, we can click and drag on each screen element of the slide into order to set a logical reading order for assistive technologies. To access the selection pane, click on the Home tab, go to the Drawing group, click the Arrange button, and choose Selection Pane from the drop-down menu. In the selection pane, you will see each screen element outlined in a list. This list is the order in which a screen reader will process each element, but keep in mind that this list is actually in reverse order, in that the last item on the list is the first element that a screen reader will encounter. To rearrange the order, click and drag to move the slide elements into the correct order, or highlight an element and click the up or down arrows in the top right of the selection pane. Based on the edits I had made to the original title slide of the accessible template I chose, the slide order now needs to be reordered so as to have a logical reading order. In this example, the slide title and subtitle got pushed down the list and need to be moved into correct reading order. I reorder these elements, moving them to the bottom of the list, with Title 2 last and Subtitle 3 second last, so that a screen reader would read these two elements first. Using the eye icon to the right of each element, you can control the visible elements of the slide, clicking the icon to turn them off or on. This is useful, for instance, if you have an image that you want to feature on a slide of its own, and for visual design reasons, you don't want the title of the slide to appear. However, you need a title to make that slide accessible. You can title the slide and then make it non-visible. The screen reader will read the title of the slide and the alt text that you will add for the image so that the slide is still accessible. You will find PowerPoint's Accessibility Checker in the same place that you found the Word Accessibility Checker. Click the File menu, click the Check for Issues button, and choose Accessibility from the drop-down menu. As with Word, you will fix errors and address warnings and tips. With those issues addressed, convert the presentation to PDF format in the same way as in Word, and then check accessibility in Acrobat as indicated earlier in this presentation. For more information on creating accessible PowerPoint presentations, consult the guide entitled Make Your PowerPoint Presentations Accessible to People with Disabilities, available on the Microsoft Office Support website. So in this presentation, we have taken a look at accessibility issues and accessible design tools and techniques in Microsoft Word, covering how to use heading styles to create document structure, how to access the navigation pane to navigate your document's content structure, and assess that structure that will form the bookmarks in an accessible PDF, how to enter alt text for all graphics, photos, and charts, how to create a descriptive hyperlink with meaningful context for the site or document being linked, how to use tables properly and create simple, accessible data tables, how to properly format columns and lists to make them accessible. We looked at color and contrast and how to make sense of RGB and hexadecimal codes, as well as how to assess contrast ratios to ensure compliance with WCAG standards. We covered document properties, which contain important elements like the title, subject, author, keywords, and language of a document, and how they are used by search engines and screen readers to find and identify content in documents. We explored Microsoft Word's Accessibility Checker and how to address the accessibility issues it uncovers. We looked at converting a Word doc to Adobe PDF and briefly covered how to conduct Adobe Acrobat Accessibility Check and some of the issues it presents. For PowerPoint presentations, we covered tips on how to create accessible PowerPoint presentations with accessible templates, preset slide designs, and slide layouts. We talked about the importance of descriptive slide titles as the basis of navigation bookmarks in the PDF document you export. We looked at those accessible design elements that are common to both Word and PowerPoint, like alt text for visuals and meaningful hyperlink text, and how to run the PowerPoint accessibility checker. We also explored how to ensure a logical reading order for every slide using the selection pane. Of course, there are other accessible design elements to explore that we did not have time for, but I encourage you to explore other resources like those offered by the Microsoft Support website. Thank you for joining us to explore how to make your Word and PowerPoint content more accessible to persons with disabilities.